All right. Let's make sure that we are live, everybody. Let's make sure. Oh, it kicked in kind of quick actually today. How about those apples? You guys know me. I gotta wait to see it. And we are a few minutes early here, so we'll let folks trickle in. YouTube, you're awake. Good morning, YouTube. How are you? I hope all is well. And let's see, Twitter. Are you? Yeah, Twitter's up. All right, Rockfin. Twitter's always first. There's Rockfin. Okay, so we had a 1-2-3 finish. It was Twitter is always first. It's always a battle for second. And then second we had YouTube, and then third we had Rockfin. But we are live. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. If you're in my time zone, it's a morning time zone. Hope you're having a good morning. We're a few minutes early for those catching the stream. For those listening to the podcast later, you're like, yeah, that doesn't pertain to me. I don't know. I just download it when it becomes available. And by the way, to all the podcast listeners, please do leave us a 5-star review, would you? That is very, very much appreciated. If you don't mind, please do leave us a 5-star review. But we are a few minutes early today because I have a guest. Welcome to Get Your News On With Ron, the headline show for the week. We got a lot of headlines in labor this week. Starbucks is confronting Howard Schultz directly. Also, there's an update over on the Amazon unionization efforts and an update on the stripper strike in NoHo, which we covered on this show. And also, you probably heard me talking about it a couple days ago. For those of you who caught my guest hosting on Status Coup with Tina Desiree Berg, we got an update there too. But first, we're going to talk to a very important guest for a very important cause. You know that public banking is a concept that we cover on the regular on this show. We covered the bill in California a few years ago, as well as the bill that ended up passing. It was on the ballot, I believe, in 2018. And then later a bill did pass, allowing us to make 10 public banks in the state of California. Well, there's an organization called NIB that is a national organization pushing for public banks everywhere. We're going to learn more about it. Please welcome my guest for today, Alfeka Mutardi. Alfeka, how are you?
Great, thank you, and thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start. Let's start with you. What is your background and your involvement in this organization?
Great. So I'm a macroeconomist. I worked for 25 years at the International Monetary Fund, and since retiring, I have become acquainted with a grassroots group called the National Infrastructure Bank Coalition, who's promoting a bill in Congress to create a $5 trillion public bank to lend for infrastructure projects all across the country. And as a macroeconomist, I've gone over carefully what all the benefits of this bank would be to state and local governments who've not been able to finance their infrastructure, also to labor, because this bill will require that workers who build infrastructure projects financed by the bank must be paid good Davis-Bacon wages. That'll help resolve income inequality. It'll do things like provide affordable housing units, 7 million of them targeted to the most basic folks who need affordable housing the most. It'll build high-speed rail, and it'll build all of the backlog of infrastructure projects that state and local governments have not been able to get funded through their budgets.
So I guess let's maybe back up a little bit then. So what exactly is a public bank for anyone who might not be familiar?
Well, actually, you'd be surprised to know that we've had 4 of them in our nation's past. It's not a new idea, at the national level. And of course, we have one existing for many years at the state level in North Dakota. But it's essentially a bank that is owned by a government entity, and it operates just like a commercial bank, but for the public good in constrained lending criteria that are directed by the bank. And in this case, it would be to finance infrastructure projects.
So basically, as opposed to a private bank, which is pretty much the lay of the land here in the United States for the most part, with a few exceptions, like you mentioned, instead of all these fees and all the revenue that a bank generates, instead of that going into the pockets of a couple shareholders who probably have horrible intentions for the planet, it goes into the public good infrastructure project. It could go to education. It could go to high-speed rail. It could go to high-speed internet. That's basically what a public bank is.
Right. And Alexander Hamilton invented, our first Treasury Secretary of the United States, invented this concept, and he absolutely endorsed the idea of the Constitution that this institution would be for the public welfare. So any benefits, any net profits that are made by this bank won't be going to shareholders other than to pay preferred stockholders a certain guaranteed income for their investment in the bank. They would be silent partners, by the way. But all the excess profits would actually go into a trust fund. And then that trust fund can be used to give out grants rather than loans to any public entity that can't afford to take a loan.
Okay. So, tell me more about this organization specifically then. How did this kind of come to fruition? And how is it approaching kind of a national approach at making this a reality all over the country?
That's a great question. So this is really a grassroots effort. We have just nearly a zero budget. We only collect monies for running advertisements and that kind of thing. But for the most part, we are made up of people, legislators, activist groups, all across the nation. Here's some of the ones that have been on our different calls. And we run calls and Zoom meetings to inform the public about this, and then garner their support to go to their members of Congress to get the legislation passed. And this grassroots effort is so effective that we've really recently added a whole lot of co-sponsors onto our bill. We've tripled the number of co-sponsors. So we're now up to 14. We're actively looking for more co-sponsors. The bill is currently, the version of it is currently in the House of Representatives. We don't have a Senate version yet, but we're working on that as well. And we're asking for both support of Republicans and Democrats, because the way this bill is configured, it should appeal to both sides of the aisle. It manages to finance all of our infrastructure without any recourse to the federal budget, no new spending, taxes, deficits, or anything like that. It works alongside the budget to finance these projects and complements what's already going through the budget. For example, the bill that passed last year, the infrastructure bill that passed last year, which is a little too small to do the whole job.
That's putting it gently, but yeah. So what, and we don't have to go into like all the nitty gritty of the bill, because I know that would take a very long time, but basically, can you speak to kind of like the anatomy on what it would look like on a national level? I mean, would there just be, would the banks be at the state level, and then of course there would be branches everywhere like how banks work now, or would it be like a national straight up bank where it's just the National Bank of the US, or would it be a combination thereof? What's sort of like the ideal anatomy there?
So it is a national public bank owned by the US government and these small investors in the bank. It would have branches in, at least, the bill calls it right now for at least having branches in the same cities as the 12 branches of the Federal Reserve are located. We envisage that the object is to get lending projects out into every single area of the country. And to do that, we're going to have lots of boots on the ground to get the actual projects up and running. And so we can use regular commercial banks, local credit unions, or public banks, local public banks, as storefronts for this bank for people to come in for loans. Their loan officers could act like agents on behalf of the NIB. And then the NIB also has a whole back office suite to help any municipalities that are a little bit weak on their management of projects. We can help them to formulate projects, to have the best technologies, to roll them out in the least cost way, and get the help them with the engineering aspects of the construction.
Now, how many bankers do we get to throw in jail, and will it be televised? Because that's sort of, I mean, that's a make it or break it for me. Are we gonna? We gotta follow Iceland's example. Let's throw them in jail, but let's make it entertaining. Is that in the? No, you don't need to actually answer that, but
well,
you can if you want.
We don't want to have any of our bank employees go to jail. We want to run out the very best infrastructure projects. We're going to use the model of the most recent infrastructure bank the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which during the Great Depression rolled out really big, complicated projects like the Tennessee Valley Authority, like electrifying all of rural America, and with zero corruption and zero malfeasance, and all of them were very well engineered and successful projects. That's what we want to do with this bank, and we've got lots of layers of management to make sure that that happens, including an inspector general for the bank.
All right. Yeah. And I'm not talking about the employees, by the way. I'm talking about the people at the top. But joking aside, though, would there be like you mentioned some collaboration with credit unions? Would that be in the picture? Should something like this be rolled out? I mean, I can use myself as an example. Where I live in Los Angeles, there's a credit union that is meant for people in the entertainment industry. And, it's as far as I know, it's like the only thing like it. And that's where I do all of my banking. And, as far as, banking something we got to have in our lives. And as far as banking goes, they're pretty good to work with. And they are a credit union. They're not like one of the big banks or whatever. And, they're meant for people in entertainment. So would something like that still exist? Would that exist alongside the public bank?
Yeah. So anybody that would formulate a partnership with the National Infrastructure Bank, any entity, would probably need to send their loan officers to school to learn how to administer these loans, the same as they do for the Small Business Administration, because we need to have it a little. Infrastructure loans are a little complicated. They require, good management, good rollout, good project management, those kinds of things, and checking back up on them the same way that you check back up on a small business to make sure that its loans are still continue to be performing. So there would be some, and other than that, another way that the two institutions can collaborate is the National Infrastructure Bank can act like a check clearing authority for or its correspondent bank for these other smaller banks, or people that want to participate in rebuilding America could even put their deposits into the National Infrastructure Bank. It'll have an electronic deposit, feature all across the country. There's lots of different options for how we can do this. But the idea is to make sure that we get this infrastructure rolled out into every single corner of America where funds are not reaching right now.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about just how the bill came to fruition. Was this a bill that you guys just wrote as an organization?
So the sponsor of the bill is Danny Davis, Congressman Danny Davis from Illinois, and we're so thankful that he, bothered to put in this extraordinary bill, which will really rebuild the economy, rebuild infrastructure, and complement what the budget has not been able to do. Lots of different hands went into formulating the bill itself. It has not been marked up by any committees so far. It'll go to Ways and Means first because Congressman Davis is on that committee, and we may have.
Can I jump in real quick here? Was it a matter of you reaching out to him, or was this something that he was doing on his own, and then you guys kind of were like, let's amplify this? Like, how did that come to fruition?
Yeah, we did reach out to him, and he and his legislative aides went to the legislative council, formulated the bill, put inputs in it from like professors of universities and things like that.
Wow, no kidding. They actually asked.
Oh yeah,
they talked to qualified people about such a thing. They got to start doing that for the climate. You're blowing my mind, but.
Yeah, so it will of course be marked up when time comes around for attention to be paid. Right now, we're in the phase of adding co-sponsors. That's the we want to get to a threshold of 20 to 25 co-sponsors. That will bring the bill up to the attention of the leadership. We want to get a version of it in the Senate as well, and then I'm sure the process of marking it up will commence. And the other thing of it is if we go into a recession, if economists like Larry Summers have their way of forcing such a strong cutback in money supply that we throw 10% of American workers out of work in order to cool demand to lower inflation, that's just a failed model. We don't have to do that kind of painful thing. We can use this National Infrastructure Bank to lean against any recession, to improve the economy, to actually pushes down inflation, a bill like this, because it makes the economy more efficient. This is a better way to go. And then we can put workers to work right away, doing the list of projects that every legislator has in their back file that has not been able to get funding over the last 15 years. Well, let's start with them. Let's start with all these lead service lines. Let's start with putting affordable housing into California. Let's build high-speed rail. Let's start that. Let's top up, in California's case, the other 90% of the high-speed rail financing that's still not available. Let's solve the water crisis, for heaven's sake. If we don't take care of this, we are going to wind up with higher food prices all across the country. There's no reason for cutting back on water supplies to farmers and ranchers. Already, Texas has sold out, a big chunk of its beef herds, and you're going to wind up seeing that in higher prices at McDonald's over the next 2 years, because there just aren't enough cattle around to supply the beef supply for America. Nuts, fruits, fresh vegetables, everything that they grow in California. I saw one poor organic asparagus farmer standing in front of a plow in California, which was plowing up his whole field of organic asparagus because he didn't have enough water to water it with. Let's fix these problems. Let's not wait until the last minute. We have to get on the road right now. So many of these projects are really critical.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like a public bank. It doesn't, it's not the most catchy thing right away, until you find out what it really means and what it can do. And then you're just like, why haven't we always had this? This is a no-brainer. How did we screw this up? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but let's try to fix it. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. I have the official website up here, and that website for everybody watching is nibcoalition.com. That's NIB coalition.com, where you can learn more about the bills that they have, about what they do. Is there any other resources you'd like to point everybody to check out for this movement?
There are lots of materials on this website, but one thing I wanted to point out to all of your listeners is this is really an example of where you can make your government work. You can call up your member of Congress. You can ask them to co-sponsor HR 3339, which is the number of the bill in Congress. There are different materials on the website for how you can do that. But this is a grassroots effort, and these congressmen listen to their constituents, believe me. So your listeners can be a big help in pushing the bill forward.
Well, thank you very much. Well, Fecca, thank you very much for enlightening us on this, and thank you very much for everything you do. And to everybody listening, again, that website to start with is nibcoalition.com. That's nibcoalition.com. And yeah, best wishes moving forward, and I look forward to collaborating in the future on this.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Cheers. All right. Public banks. Huh? Yeah. You know it. We need them. It's, the bank in North Dakota is insanely popular. Like it's one of the most popular banks ever, because they've had it for like 100 years and they know how good it is. You know what else they have in North Dakota that not a lot of people know about? They have some of the best broadband in the world. It's like North Dakota and Chattanooga. They have some of the best broadband. Those two things are related. And by the way, North Dakota is not some big radical lefty enclave. At least I'm going to go out on a limb and guess it's not. But they have these things because they just had a public bank and they realized how good it was. So yeah, nibcoalition.com. That was really cool of her to share all of her information there. And Roger, what's up, buddy? Roger is here in the chat. He says, "Oh shoot, you did it, Ron. Hi, Alfecca." Thank you for that, Roger. Roger was the person encouraging me to cover this. And yeah, I finally was able to reach out to them, and we were able to lock in a time and an interview. So again, everyone check out nibcoalition.com. That's nibcoalition.com, and get involved with the national push for public banks, which would be huge. I mean, again, that's one of the things. Instead of all this revenue going to a bunch of shareholders and a bunch of oil companies, it would go towards the people. It would go towards our schools, our parks, our resources, the water supply, housing. I mean, and we could have been doing banking like this the whole time, but we're not. So let's go. Do we want to do Starbucks or Amazon first? Which one do we want to do first? You know what? Let's do Amazon first. We'll go alphabetical order. And we'll do the stripper strike last because that's kind of the shortest. That's kind of the shortest update of the three. So let's start with Amazon. So this is from this week. It's official. Amazon workers at ALB1 in Sodock, New York, have filed for a union election seeking to be represented by the ALU. That's the Amazon labor union. See press release below for more details. Here's what it says. The Amazon labor union has formally filed a petition for an election of the ALB1 Amazon Fulfillment Center in Sodock, New York. We are incredibly excited and proud of the brave and dedicated Amazon workers of ALB1 for collecting a showing of interest for an official union election. We will be holding a small press conference outside the National Labor Relations Board's office in Albany, New York. So it is spreading. It continues to spread. The union efforts at Amazon are spreading. And why is this so important? Well, biggest reason is because Amazon workers are being exploited all over the freaking country. They're being exploited. They're being overworked. They're being underpaid. They're being treated like garbage. They're collapsing in facilities because they don't want to install proper air conditioning for the workers. Jeff Bezos chose to put an ambulance outside of warehouse facilities to take workers when they collapse to the hospital, as opposed to providing proper ventilation and air conditioning. He'd rather do that. So that's why they need a union. And also, look, Amazon is responsible for about 50% plus of all online commerce. They're among the behemoths that are really running this freaking place. And by the way, that's why antitrust legislation that breaks Amazon up is so important. This is one of the few shows we will bridge the connection between labor rights and digital rights. There's a reason both of those issues are in the Get Your News On with Ron theme song, because they are very closely connected with the world that we live in. So you want to help out the Amazon striking effort. A good way to do it is to support an antitrust effort that will break up big tech. And you can do that right now. Go to antitrustsummer.com. Again, that's antitrustsummer.com and sign the petition. We've been covering it every week. And they are saying that they're going to have a vote in the fall. They do have the votes to get this thing passed. It would be the most legendary antitrust legislation since the 1980s, and it'd be a huge step in breaking up big tech. Antitrustsummer.com. This win is within our grasp. We just need to demand it. Antitrustsummer.com. Because that breaks Amazon up, which helps the union efforts. You defang Amazon some, that's going to help the union efforts. That's going to make it easier for workers to unionize. So, yeah, good for the fulfillment center in Sodock, and hopefully this is the start of many, many more. I mean, I know it's already happening, and it's also happening over at Starbucks. Now, Starbucks, it seems like they are getting a new store every week. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember a couple months ago, whenever a Starbucks store would unionize, we would cover it on the show. We'd be like, hey, another Starbucks store is unionizing. That's awesome. We don't cover every store now because there's pretty much a new store every day. We'd have to just list them, which, by the way, maybe that's something I should do. Maybe I should just list all the stores. That'd be cool, actually. But they're constantly trying to unionize, which is amazing. And they're seeing some successes at it. Well, here's an update. Here's a broader update. So Howard Schultz was noticing all this, obviously. Howard Schultz, who is running Starbucks. He's the guy behind Starbucks. I know that he has changed his official title. Like, I think at one point he was no longer CEO. They all do that. I mean, Jeff Bezos, he'll be like, I'm technically not CEO anymore. But at the end of the day, guess what? We know who's running it. We know Howard Schultz runs Starbucks. Jeff Bezos runs Amazon. By the way, the CEO reports to the freaking shareholders anyway. So just because they take that CEO title out doesn't mean jack. I know some people, they think the CEO is at the very top. That's technically not true when you apply it to the world of Wall Street, especially. The CEO is in the middle when it comes to power. It's just sometimes the person at the very top will just make themselves CEO too because they can. So that's why sometimes people misunderstood. Oh, well, he's not CEO anymore. That doesn't mean shit. That means nothing. He's still overseeing the whole thing. He can fire the CEO. He being a Jeff Bezos, a Howard Schultz, and Elon Musk. Let's not pretend who our emperors are or aren't. All right. So anyway, Howard Schultz saw this happening, did everything he could to break up the unions, including, guess what he did? He made pay better. He increased pay and he increased benefits, but he's like, but this is only for the non-union Starbucks, to try to get the workers to turn against each other and to try to get them to entertain this facade that a union's not necessary. Because I'm sure that the reason he did that was just out of the goodness of his heart. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the union efforts. I'm sure he's like, I was just about to treat you guys way better, but you just had to come in and start a union. Gee, that kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. I had all these gifts for you guys. Sure you did, Howie. Sure you did. And by the way, when he unrolled that and tried to discriminate against the unionized Starbucks, he can't do that. He can't do that. So the unions are taking him to frickin' task. This is from More Perfect Union. Breaking, Starbucks Workers United, that's the hub of the union efforts, calls for House Labor Chair Representative Bobby Scott to compel Howard Schultz to testify before Congress about Starbucks illegal union busting. The illegal union busting was just what I just referred to. Well, there's more to it than that. I mean, they were also firing union leaders for no reason. They were given these bullshit reasons, but really they were just firing them for trying to unionize, which you can't do that. The scale of Starbucks' anti-union campaign is virtually unprecedented. Representative Scott has never held a hearing on it. So here's the letter. Washington, D.C., Starbucks interim CEO Howard Schultz. Yeah, it's the bullshit little thing he's given himself. He's in charge. All right. Let's just whatever. I mean, I know they have to have the official title in this letter. I totally get it. But he's in charge. All right. So Starbucks international douchebag Howard Schultz. That's how I'm going to read it. And chairperson of the board, Melody Hobson, are responsible for launching an unprecedented anti-union war against workers. Starbucks workers are asking elected officials to call Starbucks leadership before Congress to answer for their union-busting action. Under Schultz and Hobson's leadership, the company has fired over 80 workers, closed down union stores, and refused to give new wage and benefit improvements to union workers. They can't do any of that. Howard Schultz has even taken a page out of Donald Trump's playbook and is attacking the integrity of the NLRB elections in response to over 200 union victories. So the National Labor Relations Board, they oversee a lot of this stuff. They're the people who have the backs of the workers. And Howard Schultz is saying like, oh, no, that's not legit. Even though all these union votes, it's usually like 20-1. It's usually like one person who votes against the union. Everyone else is for it. Some of them have been unanimous. Some of them have been every single worker at the location has voted to unionize, which is freaking awesome. Anyway, Howard Schultz has led an unprecedented anti-union campaign, which, by the way, I want to reiterate here. They've had over 200 victories, over 200 stores. Why do we need more than 200 Starbucks stores, by the way? Let's close all the non-unionized ones or just unionize all of them. Then they can all stay open. Anyway, Howard Schultz has led an unprecedented anti-union campaign against us. And Nikki Taylor, a fired Starbucks worker from Memphis, Tennessee, that was one of the people he fired for no freaking reason other than they were trying to unionize. We need our elected officials to stand up for our right to organize and hold Starbucks accountable. How many more pro-union workers will be fired before they're made to stop? The union has filed hundreds of unfair labor practice charges against the company. The NLRB has issued 17 official complaints against Starbucks, encompassing over 70 charges and 500 violations of labor law. 500. This guy violated labor law 500 times. You really think he wants to treat his workers right? He's willing to violate labor law 500 times because people just want a union. And by the way, everything they're asking for are things they shouldn't even have to ask for. They're asking for living wages. They're asking for fair scheduling practices. They're asking for fair benefits. That's all they're asking for. That's all they're asking for. The type of respect and dignity that any worker anywhere should have. That's all they're asking for. God, I mean, how ridiculous is it that it is a lost concept in the United States of America that if somebody works 40 hours a week at an honest job, they make a living wage? If you work full time at an honest job, you should make a living wage. You should be paid a wage where you can survive. End of story. Like, full stop. Full stop. Doesn't matter what the job is. And what's that meme that went viral where it's like people who will say to someone, "Oh, well, you don't like your wage, find a better job." You're acknowledging that their job needs to exist, but whoever does that job deserves to live in poverty. You're acknowledging that you should be able to go to a Starbucks and get a coffee. You should be able to do that, but whoever makes that possible for you, they should live in poverty. What the fuck is wrong with you? What is wrong with you if you think that way? How warped is your mind? Well, you're brainwashed. Really. You're brainwashed through 50 years of anti-union and anti-worker propaganda that the United States has shoved down people's throats because they're an economy of war. And they either want you poor and in the military, or they want you to be part of the elite that keeps everything a turning, or they want you dead. One of those three. That's where and if you're not in any of those above categories, well, you're an undesirable. They're going to try to make it so your life's as shitty as possible. Starbucks workers across the country have spoken loud and clear with an 82% union election victory rate. Howard Schultz and Melody Hobson apparently believe they are above the law. This is why we urge the chairman of the House Education and Labor Committee, Representative Bobby Scott, to call a hearing to question Starbucks leadership about their scorched earth anti-union campaign. Starbucks leaves 2 empty chairs at corporate board of directors meetings, one to represent employees and one to represent customers, neither of which reign in corporate power by labor representation, said Colin Pullett, a Starbucks worker from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We are carrying on the banner of the labor movement with the idea that all labor has dignity. We call on Starbucks to stop union busting and to live up to the company's professed mission and values. Shout out to the Starbucks Workers United. And you can go to More Perfect Union. That's More Perfect Union US on Twitter to find out more about this. And yeah, I'm with them. It's freaking awesome to see. It is freaking awesome to see. So now, speaking of the NLRB, so we've covered the stripper strike in North Hollywood on this show. You've heard me cover it on Get Your News On with Ron. And for those of you who caught me guest hosting Status Coup on Tuesday, we covered it there as well, myself and Tina Desiree Berg on Status Coup. So in North Hollywood, there has been a stripper strike that has been going on for months. It was just a walkout strike, and they strike in front of the strip club pretty much every day. It's an amazing strike. They are demanding fair wages. They've had their tips taken from them. And we covered it on the show. You can see our past episodes where we go into details of what exactly has been done to them. I don't remember all the details off the top of my head. But basically, they were having their wages. They were not given their fair wages. They were not given what they should be given as far as their tips. Basically, the management was double dipping in a very, very extensive way where it was completely unethical. And they weren't protected. They weren't allowed. If a customer was out of line, they had no recourse. They couldn't get that customer thrown out of the club. They couldn't really. I mean, basically, they had to file a complaint to management. So basically, if someone's harassing you at work, you have to fill out a form, and then maybe they'll do something at some point. But they probably won't because the person's spending money. Instead of just that person getting thrown out immediately. I mean, if you're acting up at a strip club, you should get thrown out immediately, and you should never be let in again. End of story. That's it. Full stop. You're thrown out immediately. You don't get to go back there. Done. End of story. But that wasn't the policy at the Star Garden in NoHo. And so they've been on strike, and it's just been a kind of wildcat strike. It's just been them doing their thing. And here's a really cool update. Oh yeah, I like this view better. This is actually from Tina. Tina tweeted this. Breaking: the strippers on strike in North Hollywood have filed petition for union recognition with the NLRB. If recognized, they will be affiliated with Actors Equity, and that is the American Performing Arts Labor Union. So a majority of the dancers, this is their statement. Here, let me go ahead and see if I can sort of amplify that. There we go. That's much better. Actors Equity Association to unionize strippers at Star Garden, Los Angeles. A majority of the dancers employed at the Star Garden Topless Dive Bar in North Hollywood. Is that their official title? Star Garden topless dive bar. They're not making any ambiguity about what's going on there. They're like, we're a topless dive bar. Welcome. In North, by the way, I love a good dive bar. That's not meant as a slam. I mean, dive bars are my favorite types of bars. I don't know what exactly qualifies a dive bar, though. I just know one when I see one. And, what's my favorite type of bar? My favorite type of bar, Craig Finn said it best in his song Rented Room. Craig Finn of the Hold Steady. The drinks are cheap. They play the right kind of rock and roll. The drinks are cheap and they leave you alone. That's my kind of bar. Play the right kind of rock and roll. The drinks are cheap and they leave you alone. And by leave you alone, I don't mean, and I don't think he means in the literal sense, like they ignore you, but like, that they're not pushy. There's a difference between cool and then corporate pushy, where it's just like, hey, what do you need? I'll have another whiskey, please. Thank you very much. Versus, I'm going to try to upsell you some apps because it's in our corporate manual. Anyway, a majority of the dancers employed at the Star Garden Topless Dive Bar, don't know if that's the official title or not, in North Hollywood today, filed a petition for a union recognition election with the National Labor Relations Board. If the dancers win their election and the results are certified by the NLRB, the Star Garden workers will become the only strippers in the United States represented by a union. The bargaining unit will be affiliated with Actors Equity Association, the national labor union representing more than 51,000 professional actors and stage managers employed in live theater. A rally in support of Star Garden's dancers has been scheduled for this Friday, August 19th. If you're in the Los Angeles area, at 6:30 p.m. outside Equity's offices, and that's in North Hollywood. Following the rally, Schindel and Equity members will join Star Garden's dancers on the picket line at Star Garden Topless Dive Bar. That's on Lake Ocean Boulevard in North Hollywood. Star Garden's dancers are not the first strippers to seek union recognition. Strippers at San Francisco's Lusty Lady organized the Exotic Dancers Union in 1996. They were affiliated with the Service Employees International Union. The Lusty Lady closed in 2013. Strippers United stands in solidarity with the Star Garden dancers as they partner with Equity to form the first stripper union in over 25 years, the strippers advocacy group said in a statement. We are excited and proud to see the next step take place, and Strippers United will be in close connection with these fierce workers as their journey continues on. So you can learn more about the stripper strike. They are big on social media. I know they have a big social media platform on Twitter and on Instagram. You can just look up Stripper Strike NoHo. And please do check out our past episodes where we go into more depth as to why they're striking and all the ins and outs on what's going on there. That was just kind of a brief summary I gave, but we have done past episodes specifically about their strike. Strikes are happening. Labor's happening. And you can help out on the digital sphere today by going to antitrustsummer.com and signing that petition. Again, that's antitrustsummer.com. Roger Matters, thank you again for the super chat contribution. You help keep the show on the air. You're over on the Rockfin too. I told you would be impressed, Ron. Yeah, that was awesome. I really enjoyed talking to her. Roger is referring to our guest today, the Alfeka Mutardi from the National. The NIB. What's it stand for again? The National Infrastructure Bank. Is that what the letters stand for? But yeah, National Infrastructure Bank. I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure that was the. Sometimes you kind of blur them together, but the National Infrastructure Bank. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to her. That was really cool. We need Chicago Congressman Danny Davis, the author of the bill to elevate partnering and funding of worker-owned cooperatives. Yeah, I'm with you. It would be a better fit for a public-private partnership than one between corporate and government. Also, the Public Bank of North Dakota was found. I didn't know this. This is interesting. The Public Bank of North Dakota was found to be more profitable than Goldman Sachs. That's freaking awesome. That's so cool. And again, those profits, they don't go to shareholders. In the North Dakota case, they go towards the community. That's amazing. Ron, earlier this week, I attended a Starbucks rally in the Long Island suburb of Great Neck, a very hotty-toddy, upper-income, white-collar, professional managerial class community. Jocelyn, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that last name, Shiquanqui, was fired for trying to unionize. So a worker named Jocelyn was fired for trying to unionize. We were there to get her job back. I just texted her to watch your show. She might be watching your show right now. Would you like to interview her? I can hook it up. Yeah, tell her to reach out to me. She will need to tell me how to pronounce her name before we go live. I actually said the same thing to Afeka. I said, you're going to have to pronounce your name for me real quick to make sure I get it right. And hey, I mean, people pronounce my name all kinds of ways. I think it's pretty straightforward, but I've gotten a Placone, Placone. Placone's technically right. I mean, if we were speaking Italian, you would say Placone. Like, that's how you pronounce it. Sometimes people ask me, they're like, well, why don't you say it that way? And I said, because I am speaking English right now, so it's Placone. If I was in Italy and someone asked me my name and I was speaking Italian, I would say Placone. That's, to me, that's the difference. You called him Al Capone. You didn't call him Al Capone. I feel like if he went by Al Capone, he wouldn't have been as effective as a leader, quite frankly. I really do feel Al Capone. Ooh, I don't want to fuck with that guy. Al Capone. I don't know. If we're speaking English, maybe someone's more likely to fuck with that guy. You know what I mean? Ron Placone. That's easy enough. Why don't you go by Ron Placone? Because I didn't want to come across as a douchebag to every MC across the country when I was doing stand-up on the road full time. That's why. Is it Placone? It's Placone. Anyway, so thank you for that, Roger. Thank you very, very much. And yeah, thank you for turning me on to that organization. I wasn't super familiar with them until you told me about them. I didn't even know that they existed. But it's awesome that there is a national push for public banking all over the country. We had the local push here in Los Angeles that expanded to the state, and we got a bill passed because of it. That push did not succeed at the ballot box initially, but because more people pushed, they did pass a bill allowing us to construct, I believe it's 10 public banks throughout the state of California. But I don't know where it's gone since then. I don't know like when the funds are officially available or when construction might begin. I want to say it might be 23, but don't quote me on that. I don't know for sure. But yeah, I mean, we have a bill for public banks here in California that was signed into law by the governor. I just don't know the status of it as of right now. So thank you very much for that, Roger Meadows. And thanks again to our guest, Alfeka Mutardi from the National Infrastructure Bank Coalition. And again, you can check them out at nibcoalition.com. That is NIB coalition.com. And please check out the No Host Stripper Strike. You can learn about them on their Instagram and their Twitter. And you can check out past episodes of Get Your News On with Ron. To support the Amazon labor unions, a good way to do that. Defang Amazon some, which you can do by going to antitrustsummer.com and signing that petition. And of course, shout out to all the Starbucks workers as well. Some awesome labor news this week. Couple announcement, folks. Tour dates. I'll be announcing 2023 tour dates soon. But in the meantime, I got a show coming up in Los Angeles on September 10th in my neighborhood of San Pedro, California. I'm doing a show at 2 p.m. It is outdoors. It is at a place called the Corner Store. Why is it outdoors and in the middle of the afternoon? That's a weird time for stand-up, Ron. Well, because it's actually not a stand-up show. It is a historical interpretation of Lucian the satirist. He was a writer who existed in between ancient Greek and the Renaissance. I've been wanting to write this show for 10 years. I finally wrote it, and I'm going to be performing it that Saturday. I'm going to be taping the show, and then I'm going to hopefully be sending that tape out to Renaissance fairs all across the country. And I'll be doing some Renaissance fairs in 2023. It's a historic interpretation. It's funny and satirical, and you don't need to be a historian to follow the show, nor do you need to know anything about Lucian. The show is just meant for a general audience. It's not like it's going to be like some history lesson. But it references his actual work. It's basically if he was speaking today based on his work, what a show from him would be like. So anyway, you can go to ronplacone.com to learn more about that show. You don't need tickets because it's free. So if you're in the Los Angeles area and you're looking for an excuse to have a fun beach day in the afternoon, come on out. If you're already in the San Pedro neighborhood, dude, it's right. It's at the Corner Store. Come on. Free, 2 p.m. See you there, ronplacone.com. If you want to support this show on the sustainability end, best way to do it, become a patron. Patreon.com/ronplacone. For Give What You Can level, you get all kinds of cool perks, stand-up clips not available anywhere else. If you can't catch the show on September 10th, but you're thinking, I really want to see that, I'll be dropping it on my Patreon. So you can catch it on Patreon. That's for a give what you can level. You could also watch my pilot loner. I just released I haven't released it yet, but I released it to Patreon and Rockfin Premium members. It's a pilot I made about a dude who's going through quarantine with the knowledge that he could be a millionaire if he invested in his ex-girlfriend's company when she asked him to. She was his girlfriend at the time. So he has to go through quarantine knowing that and sifting through that. So it's a comedy with a lot of anti-capitalist undertones, just like everything else I write. So you can check that out now if you become a patron, patreon.com/Rob Placone. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We will be back next week. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace, love. Oh, wait, one more thing from Roger here. Join our monthly Zoom meetings the second Friday of every month to find out more about public banking across the U.S. And you can join those Zoom meetings by going to publicbankinginstitute.org. That's publicbankinginstitute.org for more information on that. So nibcoalition.com, publicbankinginstitute.org. You know, one quick aside before we sign off here. One of the critiques that people have on independent media shows and lefty media shows is that, well, it seems like there's never any solutions. It seems like people complain, but they never offer any solutions. How many calls to action did we have in this 46-minute show? How many? I want to say we had about 5. We just pushed you to the Public Banking Institute, publicbankinginstitute.org, to join up and find out what you can do in your community for public banking. nibcoalition.com to find out more about the bill that they have in Congress and for public banking. Antitrustsummer.com to sign the petition to pass antitrust legislation that would be the best antitrust legislation we've seen since the 1980s. Supporting the Amazon union efforts directly, supporting the Starbucks union efforts directly, supporting the stripper strike in NoHo. 5 calls to action. So no solutions. 5. We listed 5 in one episode. 5 calls to action. Just saying. So anyway, guys, y'all are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. This show could not exist without you. And you know the drill. In the meantime, Lucy, she says meow. I say peace, love, and a general strike. See you next week.